Well, hello again, children. We're moving on to the next day of lessons. Some of you will recognize this because it's similar to some questions that were on your tests. If you didn't get a calculator yet, you're probably going to need it for this lesson. All right, so if we look at the first one, we can see that the diagram contains two triangles. All right. They're saying that S is the tree's shadow. Now, the shadow is always going to be on the ground, so make sure if they're talking about a shadow, you don't put it on the hypotenuse. If you think about it, if the sun is up here shining down on the tree and the flagpole, the shadow will fall on the ground. Okay, and the height of the tree is represented by H. We do have numbers for the flag and its shadow. Now, since I have nothing over here on the left, I'm not going to be able to figure out the answer, but I can give you the equation I would use if you give me some kind of information. And I like to set up the proportion just the way it looks. So H is to S as 12 is to 8. Of course, you could do the reciprocals of each one. Okay, since these are already said to be similar, I can set up a proportion. Now, the first one I'm going to find is CB. I'm going to make that X. The second one I'm going to find is going to be A prime, B prime. I'm going to make that Y. All right, now some of you, well, you know what, let me do it with a proportion and then we'll talk about what else you could do. So for the X, because I have the 12 and the 6, I'm going to use their numbers and that should get me what I need. So 4 is to X as 12 is to 6. So if I cross multiply, I get 12X equals 24. So X equals 2. Now, some of you might have seen this. If you look at the 12, you can see that the corresponding side from this smaller triangle, that the 6 was half of that. So if you see that, just say divide by 2 or multiply by a half. That's fine. All right. So times 1/2 or divide by 2 would be a good enough explanation if you don't want to make the proportion. All right, now let's solve for Y. Again, I'm going to use their numbers. So I see this smaller triangle has the 4 and the 5, so I'm going to use the 12 and the Y. All right, so 4 is to 5 as 12 is to Y. So I have 4Y equals 60. So Y equals 15. Now you also, so here's your two answers. You also could have said, well, to get from the 4 to the 12, I had to multiply by 3. So to get from the 5 to the Y, if I multiply that by 3, that would give me 15. All right, so that's that for this. So now let's leave this one, and you can do it for homework. All right, next page. All right, so we want to do the height to the hypotenuse of triangle A. So the height is rad 3, and the hypotenuse is 2. For B, we want the base to the hypotenuse, again, of A. So the base is 1, and the hypotenuse is 2. Now we want to do the height to the base. All right, so the height is rad 3, and the base is 1. All right, which ratio can be used to determine the height of triangle B? Well, since B has the hypotenuse, I want the height and the hypotenuse, so I would use the red 3/2. Okay, now I'm going to come up top here and do D. All right, so I'm going to call this X. So if I'm going to use red 3/2, so that's height to hypotenuse, equals height to hypotenuse, because we have to do the corresponding, X over 1. So 2X equals red 3. So X equals red 3/2. No need to reduce it. No need to give me decimals. It is what it is. Okay. So for part E, I'm going to say which ratio can be used to determine the base of triangle B. All right, so I'm going to call that Y. So since I want to do base of triangle B, and I have the hypotenuse, I want to use 1/2. All right, so for part E, my proportion would be 1/2 equals Y over 1. If I cross multiply, 2Y equals 1, so Y equals 1/2. All right, so that's what you need to do for those. Do F, G, and H for homework, please. All right, let me see if this is in picture. No, so let me slide it up. Okay, so here we have some conversions going on. As we talked about before, if you're doing a question on the regions, they're going to have at least one conversion. So in looking at this, I think I'm going to convert everything to feet. So 5 feet is fine. The 100 yards, I'm going to change to 300 feet. And the 2 feet 9 inches, now please don't say 2.9, all right, because 9 out of 12 is 3/4 or 0.75. All right, so 9 out of 12 equals 0.75. So this would become 2.75. All right, now I'm going to label my diagram. Well, all right, so from the tripod is 100 yards from the base of the monument. So this right here is going to be 300 feet. So when I pop my triangles apart, I have the big one and the small one. This would be 2.75 with the 5-foot tripod. We want to find the height, and the whole piece here is going to be the 2.75 plus the 300. So this is going to be 302.75. All right, so now my proportion is going to be H is to 302.75 as 5 is to 2.75. Most common mistake is going to be that you don't include that 2.75. I didn't calculate this yet, so I'm going to cross multiply here. So well, I don't need my calculator for 2.75 H. 2.75 H equals 5 times 302.75. So I have 1513.75. 1513.75. Divide by both sides by 2.75. And I get 550.45 with the repeat feet. Okay, so that wasn't so bad. Actually, let me see what I wanted to do here. All right, let's try this one. Now, oh, you know what? Sorry, I'm going to go back because there's one assumption here that I'm not sure you would have made. Oops, wrong one, sorry. This one is the one we just did. All right. Being that this is the ground, we're assuming it's level, and we have a building and a tripod, we have to go into the assumption that they're perpendicular to the ground. That's probably why they say approximate height. Okay? And hopefully they are perpendicular, otherwise they'll fall over. Okay, so back to here. All right, again, we're assuming perpendicular, that they're standing this tall. All right, remember, you don't lean over. You're that tall. So we have the right angle there. There's a couple ways to determine that these two angles are congruent. I could look and say, well, this is the horizon. Again, we're going to assume that that's perpendicular, that line. So right here I have vertical angles. So I'll call that 3. And again, being that we're assuming that they're perpendicular, these two will be parallel to each other. So I could use the alternate interiors here. Okay, so anyway, we do have two similar triangles by angle. So if I have the two triangles and I want to pop them apart, some of you don't need to pop this one apart, I don't think, but I will for those of you who still need me to do that. You know what, let's make that the big one so I can tell the difference between them. Okay, if this is 35 feet, this is X. This is 5.5 feet. Notice they converted for you. Hopefully you recognize that you needed to convert there. And this is 10 feet. So my proportion is 5.5 is to 10 as 35 is to X. Cross multiply, and I get 5.5X equals 350. If I divide that by 5.5, you get X equals 63.63 repeating feet. Okay, so that's it for today. Do this one for homework. I'll post the homework questions tomorrow. Have a good day. Hope everybody's doing well. And we didn't even hear from the dog.